understand that on that day of Pentecost, those 120 people who were waiting, anticipating, hungry, thirsty for the suddenly of God that they understood was going to happen somehow in their gathering, that what happened was not even remotely anything they could have ever imagined. Willing to embrace it when it happens, knowing that what they are about to experience may be something they've never experienced before. Are we willing to embrace it when it happens, knowing that the suddenly of God cannot be contained within a 1.5 hour church service one time a week? Are we willing to embrace it? Are we only willing to embrace it as long as it is only contained to Sunday mornings as we attend once to twice a week as a regular attending American Christian? Are we willing to embrace that whatever that suddenly of God holds is now going to transform our world, reshape every part of our life? Do we want it that bad? Are we willing to be made hungry for it? Are we willing to embrace that suddenly if God were to do it? Third of all, the Spirit of God says, are we willing to accept that it won't fit into our little boxes? You see, there were a few there that heard Jesus personally talking about the coming of the Holy Spirit. He said, look, I'm going to leave you. I'm not going to forsake you. I'm going to send one greater than myself. He said that because when Jesus was on the earth, it was just Him, physical form, just Him. The Holy Spirit now would fill all humanity that would accept the gift. So therefore, it would be greater than one human being walking the earth. He said, I'm going to send one greater than myself. He will comfort you. He will empower you. He will illuminate things for you. He will be the Holy Spirit, the very Spirit of God. And though they understood the words that Jesus was speaking, their brains and their heart had no way to really understand the concept of a human being being filled with the Spirit of the Creator of the universe. So when it happened, when suddenly God poured Himself out, they began to see things they had never seen before, and they heard things they'd never heard before. They heard what sounded like, they're just trying to explain something. They're using a comparison that's relatable. It sounded like a mighty rushing wind. It wasn't like exactly like that, but that's the closest thing I can relate to. I can assure you the winds of heaven sound different than the winds of the earth, but it's the only thing they could relate to. But they heard a sound they had never heard before. They saw what seemed to be like tongues of fire that came into the room, separated, and landed on those there. It wasn't exactly fire, but it seemed to be something kind of like that. They saw something they never saw before. They heard things they never heard before. And the Spirit of God would say to Cornerstone Family Church, are you willing to accept a suddenly of God and that it will not fit into your little box? Pentecostals, charismatics, I'm birthed from the same loins you were. Are we willing to accept? Because some of us came out of some outrageous environments. Some of y'all wouldn't last 5 minutes in some of the services that were normal for me as a child growing up. You'd have been peeing your pants, I'm telling you. Pentecostals, charismatics, we're a non-denominational church. We come from all backgrounds. 60% of you were unchurched prior to coming here. So I'm gonna slice you up a little bit. Pentecostals, charismatics, are you willing to accept that the next suddenly of God is not going to fit in your box. See, that's the trouble. We who have been out there in this thing for years, we think we've got the handle on what a move of God looks like because we've seen it. And I repeat to you the words of the prophet Isaiah, forget the former things. Behold, he's about to do a new thing. It's not instant replay. It won't fit in your little box because the glory of this house is going to be greater than the glory of any former house. It's going to be bigger than speaking in tongues. It's going to be bigger than prophecy. It's going to be bigger than jumping and dancing. It might absolutely contain a lot of those things because when human beings get caught up into the presence of God, well, maybe you haven't been in that in church, but you've been in that at football games. You know you got to scream and shout. Oh, now that's a good song. Are we willing that those of us that have been through powerful church services, are we willing to accept that the suddenly of God that awaits on the horizon won't fit into our little box, that we're about to hear something we've never heard? We're about to see things we've never seen, and we can't tell you what that is until we hear it, until we see it. Because if we try to run it through the filter of our past, we're going to miss it. All we're going to see is what we're programmed to see, which is the same old, same old, same old.